Okay, let's get this party started. Hey, those of you that are on Facebook, you just saw me doing what I do best, trying to figure out technology. Although this time it was Facebook's fault because I was getting error messages. And when people that are afraid of technology see those, they assume that they're correct. But I think we're live. Hopefully you are seeing us in real time. Thank you for joining us. I'll start right up front by saying, in addition to being a labor of love, trying to get, it's a wonderful problem to have when you have, I think, 15 contributors are the most we've had for any issue. And it's so beautiful because they're literally from around the world, certainly all over the country. But of course, finding a particular day and time that works for everyone is challenging. So for the folks that can't make it, we're going to leave the door open and I'll let people come and go. But if it's a smaller group, I'll give a shout out to our contributors that couldn't make it. But we have got two amazing poets in the house. So I'm going to say very little and we're just going to get this party started. But I will say this is our annual state of the art issue. And I love all the issues we do. I mean, it's like I said, it's a labor of love because I have the opportunity to solicit and curate and edit and basically read and learn from amazing artists. So that's its own reward. But every year to have a state-of-the-art theme and invite people to talk about what they're seeing in the world. If you haven't seen this issue, it's always free. It's live on the 1455 site at 1455litarts.org. We have everyone from futurist and technologist Sean Dubravac talking about AI. We've got award-winning photographer Matt Mendelson talking about how AI is and isn't impacting the world of photography. We've got my dear friend Jenna Bloom talking about how writers get paid. We've got a bunch of college MFA professors talking about different pathways to writing that don't necessarily have to be in the academy. A lot of kind of cutting edge takes on what's going on. So that is at the front end of the issue. And then as always, we get into the artistry. So I think we had 5 different visual artists. We had original photography and a lot of original art. If some of those artists are able to join us, I will let them in to talk about it. But the best way to showcase them is to say, go check out the issue, see their amazing work. And that always reminds me to send a obligatory and heartfelt shout out to our creative director, Morgan Ryan. When we first started doing this, it was more of a static PDF type publication. And now it's truly a multimedia eMag where we are really able to incorporate video and music and art and photography. So it's just a beautiful layout. And I take no credit for that. Morgan Ryan is our MVP behind the scenes. So I thank her very much. So look, I told our 2 poets that if we don't have 15 people, that's a good problem to have because it's challenging to make sure everyone gets their spotlight. So we want them to stretch out and read. I am going to go in order of meeting. So our first reader, a contributor to this issue, is Liskin Van Pelt Deuce. And I will give a shout out to my boy, Justin Aaron, who I always shout out to. But tonight's reading, as we were saying before we came on live, it's like a 2 degrees of separation because Justin, of course, founded the Noepe Center at Martha's Vineyard. And that's how a lot of people that are now in the 1455 community first got to know each other. That's how I know Gay, who I'll introduce next. But Liskin knows Justin from a workshop that they've attended. So it just shows that community is always key. But I think Justin had mentioned movable type to Liskin, and I'm so glad he did because she sent some poetry and I said, we'll take it. So let me read her bio, and then Liskin, I would love you to read is whatever you want, whether it's from the issue or anything. But Liskin teaches languages, writing, and martial arts in Western Mass. Her poetry can be found in many journals, including most recently Sandhills Literary Magazine, Beltway Poetry Quarterly, Book of Matches, Split Rock Review, and the Ekphrastic Review, and in anthologies such as Craft Poet Anthology Series, as well as her book, What We're Made Of, from 2016. A new chapbook, Letters to My Dead, was released in 2022. What an amazing title. Liskin, thank you for being here, and we would love to hear you read some poetry.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for organizing this, and great thanks for publishing the poems. It was pretty fun. I saw, the description of the theme. I cast about and thought about what I had, and I sent you 5, and you did me the gracious favor of taking all of them, which is very exciting, and also fun because a number of them are actually older poems that were waiting to find the right home. So that's kind of fun. It was going back into the archives a little bit
Awesome.
and finding a home for them, which I appreciated. So I had in mind to read just 3. We'll see if I stick with that plan now that there's more expansiveness or not. But I'll start there and we'll see what happens.
Right on.
So all of them deal in one way or another with the creative drive to unearth and make manifest our stories, right? Whether those are our individual stories or our in many cases, more collective stories. So the first one I was going to read is the first one on the site, which is called Naming the Beast. And I'll say that this one grapples with storytelling in the sense particularly of how to sort of process and move forward with well, I guess the poem isn't explicit, but certainly it can be interpreted as more collective trauma, right? What we're the story underneath all our stories. And the idea of as being namers, writers being namers. But names are tricky because when we give names to things, it gives them power. It gives us power too, right? Because it gives us something to grasp and a way to, I mean, that's what we do, right? So that's it. But it also gives the thing named power. So there's a sensitive balance of what is it that we choose to give power to in that process of writing, and also how much relative weight do we give to past and present and future, right? And how to and the underlying history, the present moment, and what we're trying to move forward to. So this poem, perhaps a little obliquely, but it deals with those issues. So this is called Naming the Beast. And I will say it's sort of a dialogue, so I'll try to render that a little bit. Okay. Naming the beast. Name the beast. A gash, a pair of disembodied eyes, a river broken. Ignore the dark country of its terrible origins. I try. No go. A name contains a history. Fear is a danger lying in wait, says nothing, silence massing. Shame covers itself in its own blood. The most important question isn't why, but what, you insist. But when I look into the darkness to name it, you tell me to turn forward. Living is rightfully concerned with the present. Yes, but the horizon is all around us. Panic lives in caves that speak to lonely people on mountains with too vast a sky. Failure arranges paving stones to trip me. Why is the instrument of what dwells in the same layer. The beast scored me. All right, thank you. All right, the next one I thought I would read is Edmonia Lewis Carve's Hagar. And this one might need a little bit of explication just in case you're not familiar with there's two personages here. So Hagar, oh, and it's actually fun. I just learned this today. Speaking of names, I wasn't going to mention this because I thought it was tight for time, but I'll mention it. Speaking of naming, it turns out that Hagar in the Bible, so Hagar was a slave of Sarah, and who was married to Abraham, and was given to Abraham by Sarah to produce an heir, and she mothered Ishmael, who was the founder of the Ishmaelites, so the Arab race. and then was subsequently expelled by Abraham and Sarah. There's different stories according to which tradition you follow, but they all agree that one and or both of them arranged to kick her and Ishmael out. But what I found out that's kind of fun on the naming front is that she apparently is the only person in the Bible who gives God a name. She calls him I'm afraid my Hebrew pronunciation, I have no idea, but El Roy, which I guess means the God who sees me.
Wow.
So kind of, so she was a bold one, I guess. And so that's Hagar's story. And Edmonia Lewis was an 19th century American sculptor in the European tradition. She was born and raised in the US, actually ended up spending most of her working life in Italy and in Europe, and was very much, produced marbles that you would think of, European 19th century marbles. But she often took as her subjects people from her own heritage, which was a mix of African American and Native American. So so one of her famous sculptures is of Hagar, but she also did other ones with sort of her cultural heritage, which of course was quite unusual and extraordinary. So anyway, this poem, and she also, the other thing you need to know is that she, in her early life, suffered sort of parallel experiences to Hagar, in that she was quite unfairly, she suffered a lot of discrimination, including being expelled by most accounts completely unfairly from Oberlin College. They subsequently gave her an honorary degree, I believe, only like a year or two ago, a posthumous degree. So because of her, her racial background. So this one is called Edmonia Lewis Carves Hagar. If in the course of chiseling, I gouge her eye, shatter her nose, what do I do? Hagar knows about survival as well as I. Stony silence, injustice of expulsion for sins that were not ours. Metamorphic rock like this understands resistance too, inhabits hardness, its own and the battering. In the beginning, it was pearls and snails ground to slow limestone, crystallized only under pressure, heat birthing marble. Hagar founded a race of kings. I rasp her hair back, tilt her chin up, chisel anew.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you, Gay. Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting one to take on that subject matter and try to do it justice. All right. So I was going to read just one more, but maybe I'll slip an
Please
extra
do.
one in here.
Please do.
Flip.
All right. This one, I wasn't going to read it because it's a little hard to do. I'm not sure how it'll play out loud, but we'll find out.
Okay.
So this one is called Excavation, and it plays a lot with etymology, which is one of my favorite things, and has to do with a science article that the inspiration was a science article I read about a new discovery. So there, I'll try to again render the etymological bits clearly. Excavation. 24,000 years ago, the brains, guts, muscles, and reproductive systems of who knows how many deloid rotifers, deloid from Greek leech, rotifer Latin wheelbearer, froze solid. And they have lived in cryptobiosis, concealed or secret mode of life, ever since, until scientists dug them up from under 11 feet of permafrost in northeastern Siberia, a name that may or may not derive from a Tatar word for sleeping land. and when thawed, they came back to life and promptly reproduced in their asexual way, parthenogenesis, virgin birth, which would make them such an outlier in evolutionary biology that they have been called scandalous, which is funny because it's usually sex that attracts moral opprobrium. And the scientists can only conclude that they, quote, now have more questions than answers, which is ever the case anyway, despite science coming from Latin knowledge. And they are, besides, dealing with creatures whose subkingdom evolved a dozen epochs before anything resembling humans began thinking, leading, sleeping, procreating, keeping secrets, judging, or presuming, from Proto-Indo-European to take up from under, to know anything at all. That was just fun.
Fantastic.
It sounded fantastic. So I don't know what you meant it to sound like, but it sounded good to me.
Okay, thank you.
Here.
It was actually fun to read.
Good.
Okay, so I guess I will finish with the one that was going to be my third, now my fourth, which is When the Fireflies Call Your Name. And this one is certainly very much about being a writer. So about submitting to the call of the writer. Deals a little bit with the idea of trying to translate what's inherently untranslatable and say what's inherently unsayable, and somehow tell people about it. So this one is called When the Fireflies Call Your Name. When you hear your name being called from out of the middle of what you know to be silence, go ahead and listen. Hear the words beyond words humming in the vibrations of this particular assembly. Hear your name intoned as if you are dead. Mourning become a kind of mantra, sad but celebratory, a purring, silky thing like a satisfied cat. It doesn't matter if what you hear lacks translatability. That's what makes it mourning in the first place. Though we behave as if reality were within easy reach, we know we perceive only a fraction of what's there. The stars have conspired to be fireflies this evening, have divested themselves of scale to enter your night. Why not? For these few hours, forget distance. If the stars can fall to earth and dance above the daisies in the meadow, just when you are there to watch them, you can do no less in return than travel willingly through the darkness and follow wherever the voice leads.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
I love your language. There's something very rubbery about it. It hugs the curves of your.
Oh, that's
I
lovely.
sound like a wacko poet, but it really it hugs the structure, and I don't know, it's so voluptuous.
Well,
Good word.
Wonderful.
Good word. I was gonna say, in addition to kind of the sensual elements that you bring to bear, there's such an erudition. I'm kind of in awe of how smart these poems are without being show-offy or booky. There's just an erudition that obviously comes from knowing a lot of things, and that's clearly conveyed. So I tip my chapeau very happily.
Thank you. Well, thank you both.
It's a pleasure hearing it out loud. It really
Yeah, it
is.
was fun. It was fun.
All right.
Fun group.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I mean, there's nothing better than allowing a poet to stretch out rather than feel they have to cram it all in. So I'm very happy right now. So I mentioned earlier that the Justin Aaron degrees of separation. So I met our next poet, Gay Giordano, at Martha's Vineyard, gosh, probably 7 or so years ago. And
Maybe longer, yeah.
yeah, maybe longer. And, it's delightful for me to be able to say I'm introducing a friend, but I also am a fan. And as we're going to see tonight, there's just nothing quite like of course, there's few things more enriching than encountering a poet or writer or an artist that one connects with and one that resonates. But when you have the opportunity to know them and hear them read, it just adds so many dimensions to the way these things hit and stay with you. So one of the many reasons I love to do these events is, we like to showcase the voices and faces, the personalities of these poets. So it's very special because I think this is the first time that I've collaborated with Gay, and I'm certainly hoping it will not be the last time. But Gay sent me some stuff. It was a automatic yes, but the poems are amazing. I don't know what she's going to read tonight, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it. But let me tell you about Gay. She has a BA in creative writing from Carnegie Mellon University and an MA in philosophy from the New School for Social Research. Her collection of poetry, Waking from So Rich a Nightmare, was published in 2015. She writes professionally about architecture and design and is the author of Illusion in Design, Trends in Architecture and Interiors, and New York Living, Reinventing Home. She's been published in a variety of journals and won a variety of prizes. Folks, that is the condensed bio. Please, when you visit 1455litarts.org and check out this issue of Movable Type and then experience the back issues and share them with everybody, check out these bios and the links that are embedded so you can really explore these people's work, because it will be well worth your time. Gay, I am just delighted that you're here, and I cede the floor to you.
Well, thank you, Sean. And I am so glad that we hooked up on this issue. I thought that I would not read what's in 1455, because if anyone wants to read it, they can. I'm cobbling together a new chapbook or book, I don't know, with new stuff and old stuff. So I thought I'd stick with my usual themes tonight, which are animals, nature, art, and women, which fascinate me. And as far as the nature angle goes, having grown up most of my life in New York City, I have a more of a Beatrix Potter view of nature than a realistic one. So I like to write about animals in different ways. Anyway, this first one is called A Curtain Half Closed. Under the earth, crystals and caves are forming, extravagant with wavelengths of violet and itchy velvet of pigment. A splatter of ruby, azure, saffron spills out the jagged mouth of a cave, falling over itself like half a cartwheel. Clouds have chewed themselves free of each other. Fluffy phantoms bloom in their throats. A child's kite rises and knocks. A village of galaxies tossed to the ground is a cat's moonlight, bloated with bugs. Come out, wherever you are. He sits on a rock, posing with paws. Come hear me speak, I have much to tell. Everything has a tail, even if it doesn't. Frogs burp in their cheek balloons, lizards thump in cricket time, rabbits unhole, shaking their ruffs. This animal parade waits for the punchline. Here it is, says the cat, licking its ear. Open your jaws and catch what you can. We'll forgive each other another day when we all have to share the same rain under the same torn umbrella.
Wow.
Great. I like the kite and the umbrella showing up in there. Those human elements in the middle give it really great dimension.
Thank you. And this one is just a short little one about a relationship, not mine. It's called Breaking Glass. The wind inside his coat pulls him back along with his hair. That sketch of a face blows away like charcoal. Her hair, in limitless supply, plucks a lamentable air. They loved each other once, not now. Now that their lips have turned to glass, like lilies flying from a dead man's hands.
Wow. Can we hear that one again? It was short. Would you mind hearing
Yeah.
it again?
Not at all. Hold
It
on.
was lovely, and I liked it.
Thank you. Wow, my first encore.
There you go.
Breaking glass. The wind inside his coat pulls him back along with his hair. That sketch of a face blows away like charcoal. Her hair, in limitless supply, plucks a lamentable air. They loved each other once, not now. Now that their lips have turned to glass, like lilies flying from a dead man's hands.
Gorgeous.
Mhm.
You. And this one, I sense it needs some work, but enough of it is there that I hope you don't mind my giving it a shot. It's called The Art Student. And I'm fascinated with paint and layers and what's hidden and what's underneath and how a composition can come to life. I'm thinking particularly Dutch still lifes, a particular fascination where there's so much going on in there, and this dimension that makes it look dead, to me, just makes it all come to life. So I sort of micro study paintings. So this is called The Art Student. She sits stiff as an archer, readying an arrow. Her bangs cover in name only an enormous forehead. She is as embarrassed as an orange, burping its tattered seeds. A painted backdrop is her improbable home, complete with distant fishermen busy with the tide. Statues open their stone lips to the sky, like irate callers yelling at the operator. He composes her with the determination of an astronaut crossing the pocked surface of the moon. He prefers his version of things, never measuring the wisdom of making his point. She looks like she has been ordered off a boat for having a contagious infection. A child at her feet is changing history by rearranging a model of ancient Rome. He has the face of someone to whom the sum of things has already happened. Outside, the airplane is uninvented, but she takes one anyway, hovering over her body, the way subjects always do. When he lifts his brush, every bone in her body breaks.
Wow.
That ending is chef's kiss.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So,
More,
don't know if
please.
Get,
More,
get,
please.
okay.
yeah. Just do you know Mark Doty's Still Life with Oysters and Lemon?
No, I know Mark Doty's work, but I don't.
It's a prose book, but a slender. But if you like the Greek the Dutch still lives, it's a must read. It's fabulous, and it's all about that. So, called Still Life with Oysters and Lemon.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I love getting recos. Here's another relationship one. It's funny, I don't write often about relationships, which is probably why I never sent these out to be published. It's something that I don't just often cover. But here's one. It's called Tightrope. You are no more than a bodice to me. He kisses my eyelashes, a cold loyalty to habit. I feel 1,000 legs twitching on the back of my hand. His smile stretches across his face like a tightrope tossed over a canyon. I've danced this burlesque before. How could I know how much would depart? The ladders of pleasure, solid but untrue. I look at the ceiling, cracking with thirst. He was no more than a rope maker, measuring my neck.
Mm. Ooh.
Whoa. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know why I never sent that out before, maybe because it's gruesome, but
Send it out.
Send it out because it's gruesome.
Yeah.
okay. Okay, well, thank you for that feedback. It's, as we all know, poetry is a lonely existence. So it's really nice to connect to other people who live in that little microcosmic universe.
For sure. That's what we're doing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You got
Well,
something
thank
else
you
for
for the
us?
opportunity to read and be here.
Of course. Do you have anything else for us?
If you're interested, let me pull something else up.
Do it.
Oh, Uh, Actually, if you don't mind, I would like to read one of the ones that's in 1455, just because the line breaks were a little different than I had them, and I'm wondering if it makes a difference reading it. So if you don't mind just listening.
I don't mind at all.
So are you going to read it the way it is on the website, or a different way?
The way that I wrote it, it's just like a spacing thing on the computer, and these are all mostly couplets. But anyway,
Okay.
it's called, here's my Beatrix Potter view of the world. Fanfare in the night waves. An extravagant lack of foresight that night is dark and incalculable. The amateur dramatics of rubbery creatures living in cracks in the earth, bowls of water, are in rehearsal for an eternal run, untouched by our attendance. Our understanding is strictly metaphorical. Whales, the rightful heirs of pageantry, dangle underwater like drenched raincoats. Jellyfish move with some difficulty in tightened Broadway corsets. And the cries of dolphin are heard as creaking leather when an old man rises from his armchair. Above in the gallery, a sailboat rests like an endive in the waves. In the water. The sound of a gown swishing around a corner. Day arrives with our normal vocabulary, our beaks open to the sun, tulips, lipstick red and restless, while a walrus's barbershop quartet face bellows in drunken applause on the shore, not depending on us for anything at all, not even a curtain call or an assessment of language. I guess I'm very inspired by the indifference of nature, where we are not indifferent to nature at all in return.
Yeah.
Well, global warming, maybe we are, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a constant source of inspiration for all humans, and yet couldn't care less about us.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way to look at it too. Wow. Well, thank you both. I have a few, like, I guess, announcements. Like I said, Justin Aaron couldn't join us tonight, but he and I are continuing to work on 1455's Movable Feast initiative, and we're really delighted to announce, which is mentioned in this issue, that we are collaborating with the iconic Lambert's Cove Inn on Martha's Vineyard, and we're working with them to do some winter residencies in February and March of 2024. A lot more information is forthcoming, but Justin and I have had a great time, as you can imagine, kind of brainstorming that and trying to figure out a way. Martha's Vineyard is so special for so many of us from the Noepe community, because that's where we all first met, and it's a very it's a place that's very conducive to being creative and appreciating nature and perhaps writing about it. So I wanted to mention that. I want to thank all the contributors that couldn't be here tonight, but again, the best way to showcase them is to say, go check it out, look at the other writing, look at the art. And I did want to take the liberty of one of our featured writers is the poet James Allen Hall, and his book Romantic Comedy came out this spring. It's extraordinary, and I want to tell a story about how he and I met, because I think that this is instructive about what it means to be a literary citizen. And there's no one definition of that, of course, but one way to proceed, especially if you're in the habit of curating content and programming, is to reach out voraciously when you encounter good writing. And I think it was the phenomenal Poem a Day service that gives you a poem in your inbox every day, which I recommend everyone subscribing to. That's curated by my alma mater, George Mason University. So shout out to Greg Wilhelm and his team for keeping that going. But the poem of the day, at some point in the early spring, was titled Erotic Crime Thriller. And it's about the movie Cruising from 1980. A very complicated, underappreciated, very controversial movie. Let it suffice to say it stars Al Pacino rocking an afro or a perm. So that alone is like, what? but it basically takes a very deep dive into the S&M gay culture of the late 70s, which was based on actual crimes that happened. So it's a very disturbing, very eerie, very beautiful movie. But when I saw that there was a poem about it, it got my attention. The poem knocked me out. I subsequently reached out to him to tell him how much I liked it. We exchanged books, and I didn't ask so much as demand that we feature some of his work in this issue, which he kindly allowed us to do. Gives me a chance to give a shout out to his collection. But I want to read in his absence Erotic Crime Thriller and see if you guys agree that James is amazing. And what I love about poetry just on display tonight, right? We're going from the Bible to nature, to the water, to the city. And now we're thinking about cruising, and that's what poetry can do. That's what writing can do. So I'm here for it. So Erotic Crime Thriller, and apologies in advance because I'd rather hear James read it, but we're going to take this opportunity. It's just a flimsy mattress and a hookup motel. A night when the moon is a single stud in a leather sky. Just a bed smelling of spilled poppers until two men enter. Then it's a story. One lays himself naked, face down, offering his wrists, ankles to be rope knotted. The thrill of seeing what exists after extremity. The movie's first image, a hand floating in a helpless river, cross-fading into a couple of male cops, forcing two queer sex workers, their painted mouths. All sex is a body trying to tell a story with a hand over its mouth. Because this is erotic crime, what follows are hours of leather bar dancing. The ball sweat skulking off the celluloid and plenty of interrogation. The killer spreads like a plague. First, one nondescript actor plays him, then another, until the undercover cop catches the serial virus. This being 1980, the end of innocent beds, of innocuous jocks, foam parties, condomless trade. As if the director, in conjuring the end of taboo in strobe light, in dim urinals, in park bushes, under the spinning dome of moon, in trying to make us subject, has subjected us to ravage instead. My friend says I'm dramatic, says you can't blame art for epidemiology. Forgive me. I have come here for the river, to the bed, to the foaming edge of time, to 1980, a year before the first reported cases. I have come with my one good hand and all my blood, and I will say anything to save us. So, yeah.
Yeah, he's a stunning writer, that's for sure.
Yeah. And again, you know, for me personally, in my personal wheelhouse, my aesthetic wheelhouse, a poem about, of course, that takes cruising as an opportunity to interrogate all of those issues, and a real kind of elegiac recollection of the AIDS crisis before it really blew into a full crisis. It's just stunning. So I wanted to celebrate that. And I also want to take the opportunity to read, I invoke the great poet, William Matthews, who I discovered, years ago. I think also through a poem of the day of the Washington Post book world, which, well, actually, I was going to say sadly is defunct. I think they're resurrecting it. So yay. But when the newspaper used to come and the Sunday paper was, an obligatory physical experience, there was the Poets Corner that I think Edward Hirsch started. And I think I first encountered William Matthews then, but he was one of the first poets I read that awakened in me the understanding that you could write about anything. So kind of like James with cruising, William has some poems about jazz, which as a jazz fanatic that hadn't written a lot about jazz in the late 90s, was a real epiphany for me. But the reason I invoke him in my director's note in this issue is there's a story from the New Yorker that I linked to where I think it's Adam Gopnik is talking about one of the reasons that children struggle learning any subject, especially math and science, is arguably because we teach it the wrong way. If we taught it with joy, without pressure, and there wasn't this understanding or this implicit understanding that to be smart, you need to get this, maybe more of us would enjoy and understand science and math, which immediately made me think of an amazing poem. And you'll know the line when you hear it. But it's basically talking about getting into enlightenment need not be something that is an exclusive. It should be open. It should be sent out with open arms, and anyone should be able to access it. So this is a poem about one of my all-time favorite musicians, Charles Mingus, who I've written about. And this is by William Matthews, called Mingus at the Showplace. I was miserable, of course, for I was 17. And so I swung into action and wrote a poem. And it was miserable, for that was how I thought poetry worked. You digested experience and shat literature. It was 1960 at the Showplace, long since defunct, on West 4th Street, and I sat at the bar, casting beer money from a thin reel of ones. The kid in the big city, big ears like a puppy. And I knew Mingus was a genius. I knew 2 other things, but they were wrong as it happened. So I made him look at the poem. There's a lot of that going around, he said. And sweet baby Jesus, he was right. He laughed amiably. He didn't look as though he thought bad poems were dangerous, the way some poets do. If they were baseball executives, they'd plot to destroy sandlots everywhere so that the game could be saved from children. Of course, later that night, Mingus fired his pianist in mid-number and flurried him from the stand. We've suffered a diminuendo in personnel, he explained, and the band played on.
Wow.
That's the great William Matthews. Rest in peace, rest in power. And hey, if you're checking this out tonight, check out List Getting Gay, check out James and his new collection, check out William Matthews, check out Movable Type, connect with your fellow artists, buy their books, spread the word, celebrate storytelling, and our doors are always open. Let us know what you think about the state of the art. If you want to be involved in Movable Type, send us what you got, recommend it to your friends. We want to publish and celebrate as many artists as possible. So I wanted to thank both of you for sharing your work and allowing Movable Type to raise its game by including both of you, for being here tonight to read your work. It was a complete joy. And I would certainly welcome either of you to have, if you have any closing thoughts or words.
Just
Thinking about what you were talking about, math and science, not that it's directly related to what we're doing, but math and science are so filled with luxurious stories. And the way they're told are as facts you need to memorize. But math is the most beautiful language in the world, and it's the only one that guarantees truth. So if only it was taught by poets or something like that. It's inaccessible to too many people because it's like the Parthenon. It's untouchable. It's unbreakable.
Yeah, and shame on us if we as poets and writers are not doing everything we can to make art accessible and showcase the joy of creativity and what a healing process it can be to initiate connection, as opposed to feeling this is our special turf and one needs to study and approach it with, all kinds of respect and deference. I think
poetic thinking is a very useful tool to approach the sciences with. It just, I don't know. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but.
And mathematics and poetry overlap so much anyway, in so many ways. I mean, well, you have a background in architecture and design. You certainly know the role of mathematics in beauty.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
I love math more than I did as a student, and I think there's something to that. Aside from my own personal inadequacies, there you can appreciate this language that transcends culture and time. And I like the way you put it, Gay. It's the truth, and it's circa 2023. We're all about things that we know are true and are irrefutable. However often charlatans want to pretend to debate or obfuscate. There's the truth, and then there's everything else.
Yes. Yes.
So, well, I always say once you've become part of the 1455 family, it's like the mafia. You're in for life. So I hope that this is not the only time that we feature both of your writing, and that you join us again for a future celebration. But in the meantime, I wish you both a peaceful and productive summer. Be in touch, and I thank you so much for sharing your beautiful work. It's why we do this.
Thank you, Sean. This is just wonderful. I'm delighted to be a part of it.
Me too, Sean, and it's great to see your little face again.
Yay. Well, to be continued. Everyone that checked it out or will check it out, because we're going to post this on our YouTube page. We'll post it on the website. Thank you for checking it out. Spread the word. Come join us, and we'll see you again soon. Everyone be well.
Be well.